We are often taught, especially in these challenging times, to resist injustice and to confront those who would act in a way that is harmful or self-serving. And while it is true that, at times, confrontation is necessary, there are also times when we must step back and reconsider our role in dealing with others, particularly those whose character is marked by deep narcissism. These are individuals whose lives seem ruled by an inflated sense of their own importance, a relentless need for admiration, and a tendency to manipulate situations for their own gain. But what does God do when faced with such pride? First, let us consider God's humbling influence. It is easy in our frustration to desire immediate retribution or to attempt to impose our own sense of justice on those who walk through life with a self-centered vision. Yet, it is important to recognize that God does not act in haste, and He does not deal with narcissism in the same manner we might expect. God, in His wisdom, allows pride to reach its fullest expression. He does not immediately take action, but instead, He allows the consequences of a narcissist's actions to unfold in their own lives. This is a form of divine discipline, where the consequences of pride ultimately bring the individual to the point of realization. It is a law of the universe that cannot be broken. Pride comes before a fall. The second thing God does in dealing with narcissism is that He leaves them to themselves with grace. This might seem contradictory, but it is in God's mercy that He allows individuals to face their own choices, rather than forcibly intervening in their will. Narcissists, for all their outward self-assurance, are often deeply insecure. They demand admiration, but it never satisfies. They reach for control, but it slips away. In leaving them to their own devices, God does not abandon them, but provides them the space to experience the fullness of their choices. It is here, in the isolation of their self-created world, that they may begin to face their limitations, though they might not do so immediately. God's timing in transformation must not be underestimated. It is common for us to feel the impulse to correct or engage with a narcissist, to set things right, but God's patience is far greater than our own. He is not hasty in His dealings. He works, often in ways we cannot perceive, shaping the soul in ways that go unnoticed at first. It is here that we are called to trust, not in our ability to change the narcissist, but in God's ability to work in them. His intervention may come through gentle nudges, moments of deep introspection, or even through the pain of consequence that forces humility upon them. We must remember that, in God's eyes, all souls are valuable, and His long-term vision for transformation far exceeds any short-term victory we might seek. My dear friends, when you encounter the narcissist, whether in your family, at work, or even within the church, do not make the mistake of thinking that your struggle is against them alone. Instead, remember that God is at work in ways that we cannot always see, shaping hearts, bending pride, and creating opportunities for humility. The greatest thing we can do is to trust God's work, refrain from fighting, and allow His wisdom and timing to reveal His will. In this we are called to peace, to patience, and to the quiet strength that comes from knowing that the battle is not ours to fight. Let God, in His infinite mercy and wisdom, bring about what only He can do. And so, rather than pressing against the wall of narcissism with our own hands, let us trust that God is at work even when we cannot see it, and be patient as He shapes the soul of those who so desperately need it. God's response to pride especially in those with narcissistic tendencies, is a profound aspect of his divine justice and mercy. At the heart of this is the understanding that pride is not just an attitude, it is a force that opposes God's design for humanity. Narcissism, in its purest form, is an exaggerated sense of self-importance that stems from an internal belief that one is superior to others, deserving of admiration, and above reproach. When God encounters such pride, he does not react impulsively or with harsh judgment. Instead, his approach is deliberate, rooted in the deep wisdom that allows the narcissist to experience the consequences of their own behavior. This is where God's method diverges from human instincts. While we might feel compelled to challenge, correct, or expose the narcissist's flaws immediately, God does not rush to act. Rather, he permits the narcissist to indulge in their pride, giving them the opportunity to confront the inherent emptiness of their inflated self-view. This divine allowance is not an act of neglect or indifference, rather. It is a form of spiritual discipline. God's justice is not merely punitive, but restorative. The narcissist may bask in their self-constructed world of superiority, but this does not escape God's notice. The individual may seem untouchable in their arrogance, but the reality is that pride is a fragile foundation. It creates a house built on sand, destined to crumble under its own weight. As they continue to exalt themselves, God allows them to reach the pinnacle of their pride, to climb as high as they can on their own. Yet this very ascent is fraught with dangers that only become visible once they are at the peak. The higher they climb, the more apparent it becomes that the ground they stand on is unstable. The applause they seek will eventually grow faint, the adoration they crave will begin to fade, and the control they exert will slip through their fingers. This gradual unfolding of consequences is a key part of God's method. Rather than striking down the narcissist in a dramatic moment of judgment, he allows the consequences of their actions to accumulate over time. It is in this unfolding that the true nature of pride becomes evident. While a narcissist may bask in the glory of their self-created image for a time, the consequences begin to show. Their relationships fray, as those around them grow weary of the constant manipulation and self-centered behavior. They may alienate themselves from others, building walls between themselves and the people who could offer them the love and humility they desperately need. The more they push others away, the more isolated they become, until they are left with the emptiness of their own self-exaltation. This, in essence, is the outcome of pride, the distance it creates between the individual and the world around them, including God. God's approach to narcissism highlights a profound aspect of his character, his patience. God does not act on impulse, or in haste. He operates in accordance with a plan that spans the length of a person's life. His actions are always intended to guide the individual towards humility, but he does so in his time, not in ours. For a narcissist, this patience can be uncomfortable. They may not immediately see or feel the effects of their actions. At first, they may even believe that their pride is serving them well. But God's patience with the narcissist is not a passive acceptance. It is a careful, calculated method of allowing the individual to experience the truth about themselves. As they continue to climb, reaching higher levels of pride, they will eventually face the inevitable fall, a fall that occurs not because God is punishing them, but because the very nature of pride carries its own downfall. It is also important to note that God's treatment of pride in the narcissist is not without mercy. Even in his allowance for them to experience the consequences of their pride, he offers them grace. The fall is not the end. In God's economy, there is always room for repentance and restoration, no matter how high the narcissist has climbed. This mercy is what differentiates God's actions from human desire for vengeance. While we might wish to see immediate retribution for their actions, God's goal is always to bring the person to a place of humility where true transformation can take place. It is only through experiencing the emptiness of pride that the narcissist can come to understand the value of humility. In this way, God uses pride not as a punishment, but as a tool for ultimate restoration. Thus, the first thing that God does with a narcissist to allow them to reach the peak of their pride, to let them experience the consequences of their inflated self-image. This act of divine patience is not an abandonment, but a preparation for the humility that must eventually follow. God, in his wisdom, does not rush to correct the narcissist, but allows them to face the natural outcomes of their behavior, trusting that in this process their pride will eventually give way to a deeper understanding of their true place in the world. Through this method, God is not only dealing with the narcissist's pride, but also inviting them into a transformative journey towards humility and spiritual growth. God's response to narcissism also involves an important element: his choice to leave individuals to themselves, offering them grace in the process. This is a concept that may seem paradoxical at first, especially when viewed through the lens of human justice, which often desires direct intervention or immediate correction. However, in God's eyes, there is wisdom in giving people the space to experience their own choices and the consequences that follow. When it comes to the narcissist, God's grace often appears in the form of his allowing them to live according to the desires of their pride. Rather than forcing them into humility or compelling them to repent, God often steps back, not in abandonment, but in a form of spiritual autonomy that gives the individual the opportunity to experience the fullness of their actions. At first glance, this may seem like a lack of concern or a passive acceptance of their behavior, but in reality it is a profound act of divine mercy. God understands that the journey towards humility and true transformation cannot be rushed. Just as a child must sometimes learn the consequences of their own actions in order to grow, so too must an adult, especially one trapped in the delusion of narcissism, come to face the fruits of their own pride. When God leaves the narcissist to themselves, he does not remove his presence or his grace from their life. Rather, he allows them to experience the emptiness that comes from self-centeredness. In their pursuit of admiration and control, they will eventually find that these pursuits do not bring the fulfillment they hope for. Their relationships will grow shallow as they manipulate and demand attention without offering genuine love or concern in return. The very people they seek to dominate will eventually tire of their manipulation, and this isolation will become the stage upon which God's grace works. This withdrawal, in essence, provides the narcissist with the opportunity to encounter their own limitations. Though they may outwardly appear self-sufficient, inwardly they are often deeply insecure. Their need for validation and control is never truly satisfied, even when they receive the praise and recognition they so desperately seek. Over time, this lack of true fulfillment will start to create cracks in their self-image. No amount of external admiration or conquest can fill the void that comes from being disconnected from the deeper purpose of life. In this space of spiritual emptiness, God's grace operates as an invitation to return to a place of true peace, one that does not rely on self-promotion or control over others. When God leaves the narcissist to their own devices, it provides an opportunity for personal reflection, albeit one that may take time to manifest. Narcissists are often caught in a cycle of self-deception, where their inflated sense of importance blinds them to the reality of their behavior. They may not immediately recognize the pain they cause or the isolation they experience. However, as time passes, the weight of their decisions becomes more apparent. The people around them, who once offered validation or deference, begin to withdraw, and the narcissist is left standing in the midst of their own creation. It is in these moments, where the emptiness of self-centeredness becomes undeniable, that God's grace has the potential to reach them. In the silence of their isolation, there is an opportunity for the narcissist to come to terms with the futility of their pursuits. In this space, the seed of humility can be planted. It is important to recognize that God's decision to leave a narcissist to themselves is not a form of abandonment, but an expression of His respect for human free will. God allows the narcissist the freedom to choose their path, trusting that the consequences of their choices will eventually lead them to a place of realization. This is a reminder that God does not force change upon anyone. Instead, He offers the opportunity for transformation through the experiences that unfold. When a person is given the freedom to choose their way, they are also given the chance to make a meaningful decision to change, rather than being coerced into it. For the narcissist, the gradual realization that their way is leading them to emptiness may be the very thing that opens the door for a deeper understanding of humility. This process is slow and often painful, but it is essential for the narcissist's long-term transformation. As they face the limitations of their pride, the opportunity for genuine self-awareness begins to emerge. This is not a quick fix, but a deep, internal shift that requires time and space to unfold. In leaving the narcissist to their own devices, God works through the painful experiences of life to bring about the kind of transformation that cannot be achieved through external confrontation alone. It is not through immediate judgment or correction that God moves in the heart of the narcissist, but through the quieter, more subtle experiences of life that reveal the hollowness of their self-sufficiency. God's timing in the transformation of a narcissist is an often overlooked yet deeply important aspect of divine intervention. While it may seem at times that the narcissist remains unchanged or even prospering in their pride, God operates on a different timeline than we do. His timing, unlike our own, is never rushed or influenced by human urgency. It is based on an eternal perspective, one that takes into account the full scope of a person's life, the spiritual growth needed, and the proper moment for transformation to occur. For the narcissist, this means that their journey to humility may take time, a process that unfolds not according to human expectations, but according to the divine will and wisdom. In our world, we often want change to be immediate, especially when we witness toxic or damaging behavior. Our instinct is to intervene quickly, to bring about justice and correction as soon as we see pride or narcissism in someone. But God's approach is far more deliberate. He does not rush to correct, nor does He act prematurely in ways that would disrupt the person's ability to make meaningful decisions. Instead, God's timing in working with a narcissist is part of His larger plan for that person's life, a plan that involves gradual, sometimes painful, but ultimately redemptive steps. His work in the narcissist's heart is not something that can be forced or hurried, but rather something that must be allowed to unfold at the right moment. The narcissist's pride often blinds them to the deeper truths about themselves. Their self-importance and need for validation create a barrier that keeps them from recognizing the emptiness at the center of their soul. For this reason, the transformation that God seeks to bring about cannot occur until the individual is ready to face the reality of their pride. This readiness may not come all at once. Instead, God allows time for the narcissist to experience the full effects of their self-centered behavior. Over time, as they continue to push others away, as they face the consequences of their manipulative actions, and as they struggle to fill the void within themselves with admiration and power, the truth about their emptiness begins to surface. This process is slow because it requires the narcissist to reach the breaking point, the moment when they can no longer deny the hollowness of their pursuits. While this may seem like a slow and agonizing path, it is the path that best enables true transformation. Change cannot be forced upon someone, it must come from within, and this often requires a deep internal struggle. The narcissist must come to a place where they realize that their self-exaltation is unsustainable and ultimately unfulfilling. This realization often takes time, and it is only in God's perfect timing that this moment of awakening occurs. If the process were rushed or prematurely interrupted, the narcissist might never reach that point of realization. In his wisdom, God knows that only when the individual is truly ready to face the truth will real change begin. This process of transformation is not something that happens in an instant. It involves a series of events, sometimes painful, sometimes subtle, that chip away at the narcissist's defense mechanisms. These events may include failures, rejections, or moments of profound isolation. Narcissists often live in a world where they are shielded from the full consequences of their actions, but as God works through their life, He allows them to experience the realities of their behavior. These experiences may appear negative on the surface, but they are part of God's redemptive work. The narcissist needs to come to the point where they are willing to look inward, to confront their own flaws, and to realize that their pride has led them down a path of isolation and emptiness. Only then can God begin the process of healing and transformation. This is why the timing of God's intervention is crucial. He works within the contours of the narcissist's life, allowing them to experience the fruits of their pride, and yet He is always present, gently guiding them toward a moment of change. This moment of change does not necessarily occur in a dramatic or sudden way. It can come through a series of small realizations and experiences that gradually chip away at the narcissist's self-deception. God's role in this is not to forcefully dismantle their pride, but to create the circumstances where they are led to confront it themselves. God's timing in dealing with the narcissist is also shaped by His infinite patience. While humans may grow impatient with the slow pace of change, God understands that true transformation takes time. It is easy to want immediate results, to see the narcissist humbled or corrected right away, but God's patience allows for a more thorough and lasting change. For the narcissist, the process of facing their pride and coming to a place of humility requires deep introspection, and it is in this process that they can experience true healing. God's patience means that He does not give up on them, even when the process seems slow or when their pride continues to dominate. He continues to work in the background, bringing about the necessary conditions for transformation at the right time. In this regard, God's timing is also a form of grace. It is not out of cruelty or neglect that He does not intervene immediately, rather, it is because He knows that true humility cannot be rushed. The narcissist's soul must go through a process of learning, experiencing, and realizing that self-exaltation is not the path to fulfillment. This is a deeply personal journey, one that cannot be dictated by human desires or frustrations. God knows exactly when the moment is right for the narcissist to face the truth and when they are ready to surrender their pride. His timing is never accidental, it is always in alignment with His greater plan for that person's spiritual growth and well-being.